better.
Welcome to the second big release of Battlefield 1 DLC in the Name of the Tsar, coming out in September. A few months back at EA Play, I got to get a first look at this, including a couple of the weapons on the map Lovkov Pass, which is now out. EA sponsored myself and many other YouTubers to come out and capture this footage early, where we spent a full day playing this game, as well as some of the next day, and still didn't play every single map and mode variation, but we got to see a lot of it. And in this video, I wanted to give you my top 3 things from the event, as well as some other details as we go along. I did a similar video of this already on the Name of the Tsar, but as mentioned, that was a very small preview that we got to see at EA Play. So this is going to be a bit more expansive, and I'm not going to include anything that was in that last video. So starting us out at number 1 is the new assault truck. On many of these maps and modes, they actually limited on the specific map which tanks we were allowed to select, some of them only allowing us to take the Landship. On this one in particular, we were only allowed to take the artillery truck or the new assault truck. It had 3 different variations to it. The basic top one being able to drop meds and health, as well as having a light machine gun, able to take out heavier vehicles, as well as kind of more well-rounded. An anti-tank one specifically designed for taking out tanks, had an anti-tank grenade. And then the bottom one, which was a reconnaissance, actually able to drop spotting flares on top of having a shell that, when it got far enough, would explode, doing a massive AoE damage. However, not able to do enough damage to kill one infantry person. So better to kind of shoot into a bunker and kind of clear it out, doing a lot of damage within. All of them were good, but in general, this vehicle was just awesome to use. Not only visually pleasing, where every time you shot, you can see from the back, especially in third person, the guy would throw the shell out the top. Or you would throw a smoke grenade out, for example, and you'd see the hatch open up and then the grenade just, or the smoke grenade flying out onto the field point. There was one other vehicle that they introduced, which was specifically for the German side on the map Albion, which you guys probably saw some of my CTE gameplay for, or may have experienced it yourself already. This is essentially a little boat that you can use as a carrier or transport. People could even just spawn in the middle, don't necessarily have to be on one of the turrets again, and can use it as just a ride-in and a deployment point for the German side. I personally like this implementation in terms of choosing your own spawn points. It gives the other team something to fight against in particular, especially for just a general mode like Conquest. Really interesting implementation, but, you know, there's no new behemoth, so it's not the same as a super mega tank like the last DLC. Coming in for number 2 was this map you've been seeing me play on, Galicia, if that's even how you say it. We got to see 3 new maps that we had not yet seen on the community test environment. This one, the one with the cathedral that you saw live stream from Battlefield 1, as well as another pretty much completely snow-covered map with a slight elevation in the very center of it. This could have been a little bit biased from myself because I had already played the other maps on the community test environment, but trying to look at this with a clean slate, all of them at the same time, this was one of my favorites because of how open and flat it is in terms of there's not that much secondary levels to go to, but there's still enough cover that you can use it, and it felt really good in terms of having just this tank on the map, which was relatively easy to take out versus some of like a heavy tank, for example. They limited it to just this one. So the infantry really did stand a chance against it, at least from what I could tell. There was still some air vehicles, although they didn't give too many. And the way that the map designed was a little interesting. It was kind of shaped like the objectives for Conquest, at least, more like a pyramid. I found myself at times just following the route, trying to go to C, which was at the top of the map, but you could also use the somewhat trench line to go through the middle, or even these blast holes that were made in the map, these craters. You can dive into those and make your way across the field on the bottom, which a lot of people really didn't expect. You could also use long-range snipers, close range, and when the fog came in, it really limited you to close range. But this was the map, if any, that I personally wanted to go back and play more of. As for the other map with the cathedral, this was really interesting because we got to see it on Conquest, and with the 3 different objectives that were there, that's right, there was only 3 of them, it made me a bit worried that we're going to see something like Suez happen again. If you guys remember when Suez first came out for Conquest, there was only 3 objectives, and one team would get a 3-cap on them and then spawn camp them because they could not escape the objective. And this is actually potentially even a worse offender because it's actually all inside. There's no open desert for you to run on, although I do see how that is a problem as well. In open desert, you're just going to get shot out trying to stay on the way outside and flank around, capture that back objective that hopefully should give you another spawn point. Well, on this, it's all inside, and there's really 2 routes out of the objective, left or right. Though there are a couple in the middle as well, a team could theoretically lock you in. So I'm interested to see how that plays out as we get more time on it. But the design of it was absolutely beautiful, and that also was limited to the 1 tank, the land ship, with no air vehicles as well. Finally, the last map we saw was Volga River, which I really liked for sniping. It's what I did the majority on. A nice sunset setting, and there was a lot of different terrain on here. Also, tanks could be used on this map. In terms of the design and objectives, it also went back to something that was more reminiscent for the classic Battlefield 1 maps, with objectives really spread out all over the place, so you can go in any direction to any of them, and it makes it a little bit more dynamic. The way it was set up was 2 on 2 objectives close to 1 base, 3 objectives in the middle, so it even looked reminiscent to Novel Knights, although this one in the daylight more so and covered in all the snow. Besides the new maps, we also got to see a new mode, Supply Drop. I'm not including this in my top list here because at least from the games that we had played, I'm not too sure about it yet. I need more time with it. The way that the game played was from the sky, planes would fly over and drop a supply crate. It would land and you would need to stand next to it and essentially pull resources out of the supply drop. Once it was completely gone, the crate disappeared. Multiple would be down at one time, usually 2 to 3, and it felt very similar to the game mode from Star Wars Battlefront called Drop Zone, where they would drop the thing, you'd have to go activate it, wait for 40 seconds or so, and then you captured it. This was slightly different because as you stood near it, you would actually earn points for it, but it turned into a cluster of people not wanting to stand on the objective because you're just going to get blown up with the amount of explosives that were coming your way. Fortunately, we did have the new iteration in this game with the specializations, where you could essentially get perks that, for example, you could have flak on to reduce the amount of explosive damage that you would take. So there were benefits to that. And that is actually really nice to play with because it gives you a little something else to customize and work on with your character while you're playing. But overall, it was an enjoyable mode. It was very fast-paced, and it's just good to see some more modes being introduced. I personally enjoy the infantry-style gameplay, and in particular, something that you've heard me advocating in the past for months. They need to implement a Battle Royale mode. Could you imagine on the Frostbite engine? If you've been under a complete rock, essentially it's a mode where you all drop onto an island and it's the last man alive wins. At this point, I'm doubtful it'll ever be introduced, but keep introducing the new modes, Battlefield. Maybe one day we'll make it all the way there. Finally, my third favorite thing that I got to see, which you may not expect, was a pistol. A pistol that is essentially a bolt-action sniper rifle. This thing was a beauty to use. It was so much fun trying to get close range. It's kind of like the Calibri in terms of, it's a little bit gimmicky, but this one I feel like has a lot more use to it. You could try and get one-shots on people, especially headshot if you got close range enough, but it was a cool alternative to some of the other weapons. In particular, one of the other new weapons that I really enjoyed was this new light machine gun. 120 rounds by default, and it takes quite a while for it to overheat. Unlike the MG, the recent guns that they've added, which were extremely fast fire rate, this was a little bit slower fire rate and actually looked a lot like those guns that you just mount as turrets. Maybe it even is one. Very accurate, good damage. You could still move relatively quick with it as well, but the best part is that the reload for it was very different from any of the other standard light machine guns that you would ever expect. Rather than doing a full reload, taking out all the ammo that was currently loaded up and then putting in a brand new box or a new belt or whatever, this added a new stack of bullets on top of the previous ones, which meant that the more ammo you expended, the longer the reload. If you only had one row of it gone, you could just toss on another row on top. With 120 rounds too, this thing was pretty much always ready to go. The other new weapons, one for each of the classes, I had already showed off in some of the community test environment over the last month or so. Again, maybe that's why I'm a bit biased to the new stuff, but even considering that, for example, the new submachine gun is really, even in any of the situations, it did not seem to be that great. Slower firing. It wasn't my personal favorite. I'd much rather take the double-barrel shotgun, which I talked about in that last video. There was a new medic rifle that had about 6 rounds, very accurate, good amount of damage to it. And a new sniper rifle, which only had 4 rounds to it and seemed to be designed for closer range, but was still bolt action. Didn't seem to be able to one-shot people. Was not. I much preferred the Mosin. The Mosin, they took a good step with. It's a marksman rifle, essentially took the stats from the Russian 1895 sniper, but smacked that marksman rifle scope on it, so it didn't get the glint, but you still had good range and visual with it. Loved it. Finally, we also did get to see the incursions, the multiplayer competitive mode in Battlefield 1, which you got to see the trailer for, but that I cannot quite speak to yet. So stay tuned for that. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed at least a brief summary of some of the content that I got to see, as well as some gameplay alongside it. I've already really covered a lot of this content from the community test environment over the last month or two, so there wasn't too much that I wanted to say in this one. Let me know what you guys think, or if you have any other questions in the comments below. That's for this one, though. Thanks so much for watching. This is StoneMountain64, over and out.